21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
There are 5 mistakes that keep entrepreneurs stuck with their health. If you're feeling like you're not feeling or performing your best, you're going to want to listen to this episode because I'm going to share with you exactly what the mistakes are, as well as what you need to do to feel and perform your best. My name is Ted Ryce. I've been in the business for over 25 years of helping entrepreneurs and executives lose fat, build lean muscle, to do it without strict diets. But a lot of people know me as the guy who's helped Robert Downey Jr. get in shape for his first Iron Man movie. I've also worked with Richard Branson and Ricky Martin. But the truth is, I started out health and fitness after a tragic loss of life in my family. And the way I found myself in the situation of being a health professional and helping other people achieve better health for themselves is I felt so bad after this loss happened that I felt broken financially, emotionally, spiritually, but also physically. And so the first place that I started was I started building my health back. So I started with the physical side. I was in therapy and doing a bunch of other things to get through, the murder of a family member, actually, my brother. And it was the physical side of things that not just helped me get my health back or my life back, really, but it was the lessons that I learned. I realized that despite the circumstances of what was going on in my life and really of my whole entire family, physical health was the way that I was able to get back to a good place of enjoying my life again, supporting my family, my other remaining family members, and then going on to support hundreds of entrepreneurs and executives in achieving their health goals. The way I ended up helping specifically entrepreneurs and executives was that when I first got my first position as a personal trainer in the Eden Rock Spa and Resort in Miami Beach, Florida, that's who hired me. But as I started getting deeper into my own entrepreneurial journey, I started having problems. I started having problems with my health because I know that if I can put more hours towards my business, that I am probably going to create more success for myself, or at least that was the belief at the time. I was telling myself a story that I was doing enough because I was going to the gym, I was making healthier choices, but the reality was that I started getting overweight. In fact, I blew up to 24% body fat, which is almost obese, when I was 36 years old. I'm 48 now, but when I was 36, I was on the edge of being obese. That might be not great, but acceptable for doctors, attorneys, other entrepreneurs, but I was in the health and fitness business. And so what happened was I had to reevaluate my entire perspective and protocol when it comes to helping people. And I had a lot of success with clients in the past, but not the success that you would think. In other words, maybe 50% of my clients would go on to get great results, and the other 50% wouldn't. Now, this was back when I was doing personal training and helping clients after getting surgeries, for example, hip and knee replacements. And so what I learned was this: there are these 5 mistakes that I see entrepreneurs making, specifically entrepreneurs and other high performing professionals. And I made them myself. And the first one is not being data driven with their health. In business, if someone's talking about their business and let's say asking you for help with their business, saying, well, I feel really good about my business. It's, I like it. We're hiring new people. We're performing at a high level. My team is great. Those are all qualitative statements, right? I like this, the team's great, etc. But what you're not telling me is like, how much money are you making? What was Q1 compared to, Q4 of last year, etc. You have to look at the data. Health is not the story you tell yourself, it's the data. For example, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. You tell me, well, I eat pretty healthy. And it's like, well, if that's true, why do you have a belly? Why do you have high blood pressure? Why is your cholesterol elevated? Why does your doctor want to put you on a statin? The truth is, you're not healthy at all. You might be healthier than someone who's a lot bigger or has more health problems than you, but you're not healthy at all. Because the great news about living in today's world in 2025, when we're doing this episode, is that we know what the standards are for health. Okay. And if you have a certain amount, past a certain amount of body fat, you're not healthy. Period. It doesn't matter that you're eating acai and with shaved organic coconut that's flown in from Phuket, Thailand. It doesn't matter. The fact is that the results that we see with your body fat test, with your muscle mass, with your blood work, that tells the true story. So again, it's great that if you're trying to make better choices, that you're with your food choices, right? You're trying to make healthier choices when you eat. It's great that you're going to the gym, but if you're not able to show, here is my health, here is why I'm healthy, you can't really say that, and you don't know how healthy you are or not. The second mistake is, again, this kind of follows the first one, but I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the States, and they don't realize that fat loss equals health, right? They don't realize that fat loss equals health. And what do I mean by that? They say, well, I go to the gym and I eat healthy and and when it comes to their health goals, they'll say something like, well, I don't really care about, having abs or, I care more about my health than the number on the scale or what my body fat percentage is. And what I end up having to tell them is like, your fat is having too much fat is a metabolic problem. In other words, you're not metabolically healthy. The number one issue that we're facing in the United States is poor metabolic health. In fact, yes, high cholesterol, it can set you up for heart disease, but even worse than high cholesterol, and usually accompanies high cholesterol, is insulin resistance. Well, what is insulin resistance or pre-diabetes or even full-blown diabetes? Well, it's when you start to fill your fat stores so much that your body starts depositing it into your vital organs, your liver. Fatty liver is one of the most common underdiagnosed medical issues happening right now. And again, this isn't influencer, what do you call it? This is not like influencer drama or whatever. These are stats that you can go to Google and look up right now for yourself. This is not contested. It may seem controversial, but it's not controversial in the sense that there's plenty of statistics. It's not debated, right? It's just not talked about a lot. So fat loss is improving your metabolic health. And so again, it comes back to this idea that we need to be data driven when achieving health goals and setting health goals. And I talked to an entrepreneur very recently, and he felt so good about what he was doing. Like, I feel a big shift in my mindset, and I'm starting to think about my food choices. And I'm exercising more consistently, and I found a way to exercise to get in and get out, and it really is making me feel good. I was like, that's all fantastic. I love that, and it's important because our emotional state, and we'll talk about this in a bit, plays right into our physical health. That said, I told him, I want to see the number on the scale go down. If you've got 30, 40, 50 pounds of fat to lose, yes, the scale is not a direct measurement of how much fat you have. You would have to get a fat scan or a body fat scan, like a DEXA scan or an InBody scan to know exactly. But we can safely say that we need that scale to come down. If you have a belly, we need that scale to come down. It's one of the most important targets that you can have when it comes to improving your health. So the third one is not consistently exercising. Not consistently exercising. What do I mean specifically? Exercise is kind of like going to work. You need to do it. Well, I don't want to say every day. You don't need to do it every day, although every day might be ideal, but you need to go to work every week, let's say. You need to go exercise every week. And one thing that's super important, I think, that so many people don't they understand it intellectually, but they don't have an embodied understanding of it, is that so many people, if I ask entrepreneurs, like, what is your retirement plan? Like, what's the plan? They'll have one. Oh, I'm going to sell my business and then I'm going to do this and I'm going to set myself up financially. But what they don't understand is you don't just want to make investments financially for your retirement or for your, when you're in your 60s, 70s, whatever it is for you. You want to make investments in your muscles and your cardiovascular system via exercise so that you are able to live the type of life that you want. I would imagine you don't want to be the person who has really won the financial game, but you're not able to travel like you wanted to because when you're walking the hills in Lisbon with the tiles that are not quite perfect because they're, doing their best to maintain their culture, you don't feel so steady on your feet. Or when you're getting on the small plane, you have to take that big step up and you can barely do it because of your weight and also loss of strength. If you want to make sure that you're going to have the energy, the strength to be independent, to travel, to play golf, to play tennis, whatever it is, you need to make investments in exercise every single week. And the best investment that you can make with exercise is resistance training. Why resistance training? It's really simple. The biggest issue, if you see someone walking with a walker or walking with a cane, barring some type of catastrophic injury that they had, let's just say they ended up due to, what we would call old age. What you're really seeing is someone who did not maintain their muscle mass. They did not maintain their strength. And as they started to lose more and more, they got to the point where they need a cane to walk. Again, I'm not talking about you were in a car accident and your leg doesn't work right because like that's a horrible thing. But that's not what we're talking about. So horrible thing is a different thing. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you didn't have any of that, but all of a sudden you started needing a cane to walk. And if you're not currently making investments in the gym, that is the path that you're on. That is the path that you're on. So we need to make investments now. And another thing that I think is really important that so many people lose sight of, you might feel okay. You might be in your 40s. I'm 48. You might be in your 40s. You might be in your 50s. You might be in your 60s. But if you want to feel great in your 70s, you can't be an average 50-year-old. Meaning this, let's say you're not in the best shape, but you're feeling pretty good at 50. In 20 years' time, you're not going to feel the same way. Age is not just a number, although I love when people say age is just a number, it's just a mindset, it's just a way of seeing things. I love when people say that. However, the reality is this: age, we die because our systems start failing due to how many chronological years that we've been alive, right? How many years we've been alive. Eventually, we wear out, we die. So, in the process of that happening, inflammation increases in our body, something called low-grade chronic inflammation, or scientists have also named it inflammaging, like the combination of the word inflammation and aging, inflammaging. And it's something that happens even if you're taking pretty good care of yourself. So it becomes really important to be not just doing okay at 50, but really excelling at 50, doing your best so that when you're 70, you're in a pretty good place. Because you can be just as good a place as a 30-year-old if you maintain your muscle mass, maintain your bone strength, maintain your cardiovascular conditioning. You can be you won't look 30 at 70, but you can still perform and maybe even feel, I'm only 48, so I don't know, but maybe even feel closer to that 30 if you take care of yourself. Mistake number 4, sacrificing sleep. We know that sleep is the time that you solidify memories. So if you're trying to learn something new, if you're not sleeping, let's say 7 hours, I think asking entrepreneurs to sleep 8 hours is not realistic, but 6.5 to 7 hours, if you're not doing that, you're not going to be learning as well. Also, it's the time if you have Alzheimer's in your family, for example, we know that when you sleep, that's when this part of your brain called the glymphatic system turns on. It starts to clean these plaques out of your brain. And if you're not sleeping enough, if you're not getting good quality sleep and sufficient sleep, those plaques start to build up more. If you're more interested in fat loss, we also know that if you're a bit sleep deprived, you end up with a hyperactive reward center in your brain. What does that mean? You're all of a sudden you're craving more junk food. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but you didn't sleep so well, and all of a sudden you're a little looser with your choices for what to eat. Someone brings up something sweet, donuts, brownies, whatever. You're just like, you know what, just give me that. And we know that people, based on studies, there's a really interesting study that people who were sleep deprived ate about 300 calories more than usual. Just the only thing that changed was their sleep. Another thing is that if you're sleeping 5 hours or less, we know that you can even lose muscle. And we talked earlier about how you need to make investments for your body, for your strength, if you want to stay off a walker, stay off a cane, if you want to, you know, be playing golf and tennis in your 60s and even 70s. Sleep is crucial for that. And I'll tell you something, I'm not a great sleeper. I've struggled with sleep for a long time. And I have to work hard to get good sleep. So I'm saying all these mistakes. I've made most of them with sleep. Also, what I didn't mention earlier is that I talked a bit about how I train celebrities and a bunch of CEOs and C-suite level executives. But what I didn't mention was that I used to go out a lot when I was in Miami Beach. Not only did I had two lives. I had this life where I was helping these high performing entrepreneurs and executives during the day with their health. Then I would go out at night and be a bit of a party animal, going to clubs, staying up late, drinking too much, doing other things as well, right? Taking things that definitely weren't good for my health. And so I've made a lot of these mistakes. And now what I do is I make sure that yes, I'll still go out. I still have drinks. I don't party like I used to by any stretch of the imagination, but I'll still go out. I'll still do some things that let's say aren't that healthy. Have too much wine, go to a nice restaurant, Michelin starred restaurant, eat too much. But now what I do is I make sure that the days that I'm not doing anything like that, I make sure that I focus on my sleep, focus on my exercise, and especially getting good sleep. It really makes everything else so easy. There's a few things that you can do, by the way, just quick to fix your sleep if you haven't already done these. We know that light is the most powerful stimulator of your circadian rhythm, your circadian clock. So if you don't have blackout blinds, those are something that you can put in your bedroom one time and you're going to sleep better as a result. Another thing is keeping your bedroom cool. Now, you can keep the AC high, that works. There's also something called the sleep aid that can cool down your actual mattress. Because one of the issues is not just the ambient temperature in the bedroom, but it's also the mattress, the covers that can cause you to overheat and disrupt your sleep. The other thing you can do is make sure that your room is soundproofed. Noise will wake you up. And even if you don't wake up in the sense that, oh, I woke up like I'm fully awake because of this noise, noise can disrupt the stages of sleep. So even if you don't wake up 100%, like I was just joking about, it will still disrupt your sleep. So if you're living, even if you're living in a nice place in San Diego, but there's a lot of traffic nearby and people revving their Ducatis and their Ferraris, it's going to take a toll on you if you're not making sure that you have some soundproofing. Yeah, you can wear sound counseling or canceling rather earplugs, but just getting your room nice and quiet is going to help a lot. So the fifth mistake is ignoring emotional health. And this one's super important. It's something that I used to do a lot, and I'll tell you a little secret about the health and fitness industry. You probably look at some of these people who are very muscular, very lean, just like my clients did when I was in my late 20s and I was the picture of health for them. But as I just stated earlier, I was going out, I was drinking too much, I was using drugs like ecstasy. And so I wasn't as healthy, I was just lean. Now, yeah, I was dancing the night away and I wasn't eating, and I maintained a lean body mass and I maintained my muscle, but I was a bit of an emotional mess. And so that's a little secret of the fitness industry that I think people don't share enough about because so many people assume that, oh, if you're in shape, if you look lean, if you look like that picture of health, you must be a picture of health in all dimensions, including the emotional, spiritual, relational, but that's typically not the case. Um, Typically, people are really extreme with health and fitness. It's usually driven by anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety in the health and fitness world. So keep that in mind. And for you, you don't want to ignore your emotional health either. For example, if you're working, I remember a client telling me, "Oh, well, I feel like I have to work all the time. I got to work. I don't have time for exercise." I'm like, "Listen, your blood work's looking pretty bad. You're in your 50s. If you don't do something about this, for sure you're going to be on your way to a heart attack or cancer diagnosis. Will you have time then for your health?" Of course, is the answer. How do I know? I've seen people who've gotten cancer diagnosed. It changes everything. A heart attack changes everything. All of a sudden, you have all this time for your health, but you don't need to go there, right? And so, what's that have to do with emotional health? Well, think a little bit deeper about why you're doing what you're doing, because the truth about highly successful people is there's something driving that. Sometimes it's an addiction to work, if you want to use that term, obsessively working, right? Whether you believe in addiction or not, or think it's a thing, but obsessively working to the point where you neglect other areas of your life that you know are important, and you know there's going to be a long-term consequence to pay that you're not going to want to pay, but yet you still keep doing the same behavior. What is the root of that? It's not always emotional, but in a lot of cases it is. Sometimes it might be you're trying to get away from your marriage that is not in a good place. Sometimes it's the fact that you grew up with no money, but now you have money, but you're so afraid of losing it that you feel you need to keep pushing for more and more and more. So don't neglect your emotional health, or maybe things are working so well. Maybe it's not the two things that I said, but you're in a position where you're kind of surrounded by negative people and you get sucked into it. And and by what I mean by negative people is like you're hanging out with people who they're doing well financially, but they don't have many hobbies or do a lot of things. So what do? They make a lot of money, they eat a lot, and they drink a lot of alcohol. And you get pulled into it because you're hanging out with the people that you're hanging out with, and that's what they're doing. And then whoever we're hanging out with, we start to pick up on their patterns of behavior and start to emulate them, mimic them, because that's what's natural for human beings. We're social animals. We start to pick up on the behavior of other people, we start to act on it. So it's really important to, if you're feeling like you're under emotional stress or you have some habits, let's say, that you know aren't good for you, and two, you want to change, but you feel kind of stuck and you're not sure how to go about changing them, start looking at like, well, where is this really coming from? Why are you working so much? Is it because you're trying to get away from, your wife is going through menopause and she's hard to deal with and you don't know how to communicate to her and you can't fix the problem because it's a biological issue. There is no fix for it. And to numb the emotions that you're dealing with because you don't have an answer, you start, right? Start drinking alcohol. That's a client. I worked with a guy who said that. I said, "Why are you drinking so much?" He said, "Yeah, I'm not really sure, just under a lot of stress." I'm like, "From work?" "Oh, no, I'm in a pretty good place work-wise. Yeah, I'm successful. I don't really need to work that much." I'm like, "Well, what's going on? Where do you notice the drinking coming from then?" He's like, "Well, I'll tell you one thing. I drink a lot less when my wife's not around." And then again, there's if that's the root of your eating or drinking, you can't just say, "Well, stop drinking then." Because what you're doing is you're using drinking to cope with stress from a situation, and you're using it in a way, you're trying to do the right thing. You're like, how do I deal with this situation? But it's a coping strategy that's going to end up destroying you. And if you don't fix the root of the problem, it's just going to get worse as well. So ignoring emotional health, it's something that the biggest thing, one of the biggest mistakes that I made was that I ignored my emotional health. I talked about how I went through something quite traumatic, the murder of a family member, my brother specifically, when I was actually 19. And I was doing all these physical things. And like I said at the beginning, it changed my life focusing on the physical. But there was a time when I realized there was no way to get, I couldn't build more muscle and get more of an ROI emotionally. I couldn't eat any healthier and then feel better emotionally. I had to directly deal with the emotional side of things. And so what I'll tell you right now is, despite the tragedy, I'm in a really good place. I travel, I have great relationships with friends. I don't drink like I used to. I don't use drugs or alcohol to cope with emotions anymore. I mean, sometimes I drink, most of the times I don't. I still do it, but it's not because I have something bad going on in my life. So, I'm the happiest I've ever been, despite some of the tragedies that have happened. And so what I would tell you is, you can get there too. You can get there too. It's not easy, but there's a path to get there, right? And for me, it started with getting back my physical health. Then I started working on my emotional health as I ran into like, well, I can't get any more ROI here. What do I need to do differently? Then I realized I was unhappy with my business. I was unhappy with the relationships that I was in, and I had to work on those I had to learn more skills for business to grow my business to what it is now. I had to develop relationship skills to make sure I was choosing the right partners in my life, because probably the number one, I've said all these 5 mistakes, but if I were to add a 6th one, it's like marrying the wrong person. So if this is resonating with you, if you want to hear more stories, if you want more practical and tactical advice, things that you can start to do in your life to improve your health, if you want more perspectives like what you're hearing, then go to my podcast. It's called Legendary Life with Ted Ryce. You can find it on wherever you listen to podcasts. You can throw it into Google and you'll find my name pop up. If you're interested in specifically how I help people with their health and fitness, especially if you're over 40, then the best place to go and check out is go to legendarylifepodcast.com/free. So that's legendarylifepodcast.com/free. That'll take you to my masterclass where I show you the exact strategies that I use to help my clients lose 15 to 20 pounds without strict diets and without spending their life in the gym.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.